Well, I'm delighted to be joined here by Yvonne Matzk for this podcast. Yvonne, welcome.
Hi, Doug. Thanks for having me.
No, really, really good to be joined with you here today. And today, of course, we're going to be talking about your new book, Smashing the Class Ceiling, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Although it's a team effort, not just my book. It's the people that were very brave enough and honest enough to share their stories with us.
Yeah, and they say everyone's got one good book in them, but for you, of course, this is at least your second book, isn't it? So, yeah, I mean, maybe that's a good point to start on. Actually, is the rationale for you writing this? So, why did you write this book? Firstly.
So I think I was inspired by actually a book that was written by one of the people that are in the book, a guy called Kevin Donaghy. So he shared with a number of people his stories of cancer in his book, Cancer Stories of Cancer and Hope. And we did the podcast around smashing the glass ceiling, and the stories resonated so well. We thought if we turned the stories into a book, then we could help even more people by getting the book out to places where people might want to hear those types of stories to inspire them or motivate them around where you start doesn't dictate where you finish, but also raise money for charity at the same time.
Yeah, fantastic. I think I'm right in saying that there are something like 19 different stories in this book, and you asked
Correct.
all the people that feature in it, who are all people from the channel that have risen to prominence and are from lower socio-economic backgrounds. You asked them all a range of questions. So, as a person that wrote the book and went through that whole process, what did any key themes emerge for you?
Yeah, so there was lots of key themes, both positive and sort of more challenging. I think the positive ones that came out of it were there's this consistently great work ethic across every single person that was in there. I think that was definitely a common theme. Very grateful as well. There was this sense of loyalty and gratitude that seemed to feed through a lot of the conversations. Put my teeth in. And I think the things that were probably more challenging that were consistent, people didn't understand how to navigate some of the corporate corridors, or they weren't given the right access to people in terms of supporting them on their journey. So there was a number of people in the book, including myself, that it was the first person that ever even worked in an office, let alone, so not even about having a degree. They'd never even had anybody to work with that could show them things like how to dress, what to wear, how to behave in certain situations. If you've worked in large corporates, you'll know that it's not just about doing a really good job, it's also navigating things like corporate politics and stuff like that, or having access to a great network, which again is something that doesn't come very naturally or is a given from people that come from that sort of that class.
Yeah, definitely. And back to the rationale for the book. So, when we talk about diversity in the channel, we're normally talking about, I suppose, gender or possibly race or one or two other things. We're rarely thinking about socio-economic background. And you say in the book that just 9% of people that work in tech come from lower socio-economic backgrounds. So it is a fact that they're underrepresented in our industry. So why is it important to shine a light on this particular aspect of diversity or lack of diversity in the sector?
So I think, so going back to the data that you've just mentioned around the 9%, that was a survey that was done by Tech Talent Charter, which I don't believe exists anymore, but they did some research around that sort of analysis around the data, people coming from a working class background. But I think when you look at where they explored and the organizations that they pulled that from, a lot of them were like the big tech companies. So like the Microsofts, the Amazons, the Googles, etc. So then when we actually started pulling back the layers and going a bit deeper, there are quite a number of organizations in our industry that do have people that come from a low social economic background, but people don't talk about it. So it's almost like the hidden denominator, and it's sort of the one that people don't discuss because of various reasons. It's almost like shameful, it's like hiding your accent or trying to cover up what you wear, and because people don't talk about it, and it's sort of, people aren't aware that it even exists. So there's, as we know, there's lots of positives that come from being from a working class upbringing, but there's also some things that have held people back as well. So using it as an opportunity to shine the positives from the channel, because I think we do a good job in a lot of cases. So sort of, but also help inspire people that are trying to tap into the channel, that it is a really great place to try and build your career.
Yeah, and of course, a bit unlike, say, gender or race, it's a bit almost invisible. Like, you can't instantly tell
Yes.
what class, if class is still a thing these days. It arguably is, but not as much as it was in the 1950s. Let's say, it's almost invisible. So, but you argue that there is a class ceiling. Obviously, it's there are barriers there that people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds face, just in the same way that women might face barriers in this industry. So, how would that kind of typically manifest itself?
So you end up double impacted as a female, for example. So there's something called the gender, there's a gender pay gap, but there's also the class pay gap. So when you look at the class pay gap, the data says that if you're a female from a working class background, you will be paid on average 12% less than your peers from a more privileged upbringing. And actually, there's only 1% difference whether you're ethnically from a minority group as well. So it's almost like a level playing field. It's the sort of it's the area that sort of brings you together. And when we looked at some of the data, when we were having some of the conversations, say with people that were from an ethnic minority group, it wasn't the ethnicity that had held them back, it was actually the class. So I think it's more, it sort of brings people together because it's the piece that actually held them back, as opposed to their race, their ethnicity, their sexual preference. It was the class piece that actually was the shared common challenge that people faced. With men, it's 9% differentiation if you're from a working class background. So you're not impacted as much, but you still are impacted. There's some really interesting stats around it, which was one of the big drivers for doing the podcast in the first place. I think one of them that resonates with me and I find really quite frustrating is that if you're low talent from a more privileged upbringing, you will still be paid on average 27% more than someone that's of top talent from a working class background. So not only are these people getting the more senior roles, the better positions, they're not as capable, and people are overpaying for that, for that role or that position just because of who they know or their network, etc. So I think it was stats like that was the driving force as well about trying to shine a light on some of this stuff.
Well, I want to come back to you in a moment, Yvonne, and ask about your background and turn the tables, if you will, on ask some of the questions that you asked the people in the book in a second. But firstly, I mean, one thing I read in the book is you actually feel that the situation is moving backwards in some ways. Is that true? You're seeing a lack of progress on this front as well?
Yeah, I think, you can see it's not just in our industry. You can see it in lots of different areas where the divide is getting bigger, so to speak, and it's becoming more challenging to get a role if you don't have a network, if you don't have access to the opportunities. And, you can see it, the challenges that we're facing at the moment. Even grads, even if you've got a degree, that doesn't guarantee you a job now. But if you've come from a more privileged upbringing, more often than not, you will have access to opportunities. Whereas if you're the first person to work in an office or you're first person to have a degree, you just don't have access to the same people that you do if you come from, a family that has access to more opportunity.
Yeah, definitely. And you talked about some of the key themes that emerged from the 19 people that you spoke to. But were there any stories in particular that you found moving listening to or as you were interviewing them?
I mean, they're all moving. I think there's probably two that resonate most, or probably more moving. I think the one though was probably Richard Ford.
Mm.
So Richard and I go back for years when we were working together during our time when he was still at HP and I was at CW. And it was only when we did the recording that I actually got to get a real insight into where he'd come from. And it's a real tragic story of abuse, and the fact that he went through that as an individual, had the challenges that he did, but then turned it around. And he didn't just turn it around. I mean, he has had one of the most successful careers of anybody that I know, and he's never ever used it to hold him back. And he's just, he's a real inspiration. He's then paid it forward. He's gone on and, he became a mentor to people that had been through care, the same system that he'd been in. And he's used it as a positive for change. And he's a fantastic role model, and somebody that I'm very privileged to have got to know even more closer over the years.
Yeah, definitely. And who was the second person?
So Tony Kent. So Tony Kent. So we were introduced by a mutual connection, actually, someone through the channel community who's also in the book, Leah. So Tony used to work at Microsoft, but again, she's had a really interesting, challenging story of, working, sort of growing up in a very disadvantaged area, lost her dad very young, had to deal with, the fact that her mum had siblings at a later date. She was actually there at the birth, and she was almost like her mum's carer. And then she's had to deal with the challenges that go from coming from that really disadvantaged upbringing, and then the nuances that come with the fact that you're successful, and the challenges that come with that when you go back to your, to the place where you grew up, and how that, the dynamics and challenges shift, and how people look at you, and they sort of, it's almost like you have to be really mindful. You sort of pivot these two worlds, if you like. So yeah, and she's made now a career off the back of her upbringing, and is an incredible speaker, does an amazing job around social mobility. So another shining example of where she's used her experience and proof and knowledge to help inspire and motivate others.
Yeah, and definitely, and to you, Yvonne. So, I mean, some people may know you from your CDW days. You were a high-flying exec at CDW, and then you left to do your own thing, really, and set up your own coaching business, Coach Year. And you're also a co-founder or founder, you might say, of the channel community, which is something that I'm involved in as well, which is all about trying to help people in the industry that may be new to the industry or lack mentors, and give them mentorship, which is great. But I mean, I think it'd be nice to just go into a bit of depth into your own story. So yeah, can you talk to us about your upbringing and also how you got into the IT channel in the first place?
Whew, okay, so I mean, my story isn't as compelling as some of the ones in the book, but I did come from a very working class family. I was born in a council house in a small market town called St Neots, which is a bit of a London overspill, and I just was brought up with the knowledge that if you want something, you have to work for it. Nothing's getting given to you. Whilst we didn't have a lot, I was very fortunate to have a very loving family, and I think some people don't have that experience. So, like I say, my story isn't as challenging as some others have had, but I think, I ended up going on YTS. That was my first ever job as an apprenticeship. It was like, basically, if you don't go to college, you're getting a job. There was no option about university. It wasn't even discussed. Even if it was an option, it wasn't one that I was ever given. So I started off working for a car sealants manufacturer in the town, and worked my way up in that role, and ended up doing really well and become a sales coordinator. then left there. Then moved, became a holiday rep, which was quite an interesting career. And I think actually, if I think back to some of the skills that I have now and where I got taught them, that was definitely through being a holiday rep. I mean, you learn to be a counsellor, a salesperson, an agony aunt, an accountant. And I think anybody should have a role at some point dealing with the general public. But it's also where I met my tribe. And I think up until that point, I'd never really met people that I felt like I'd connected with. And I think it's so important that you find people that will be there, your cheer squad, the people that will help push you forward and help motivate, like give you the confidence that you are capable of doing whatever. Because I think when you do come from a very working class upbringing, you're constantly told what you can and can't do. And it's almost like you feel like you're not allowed to reach certain ceilings because you're only meant to achieve a certain amount. And if you achieve anything more than that, like, who do you think you are, sort of thing. So you grow up with this sort of sense of you're not good enough or you're not going to be good enough. So to have a group of friends that are there to support and nurture you is so important. Came back from being a rep, ended up doing various sales careers, moved to London when I was 23, I think. Did, again, work for Thomson Directories, who don't exist anymore. Decided that I wanted to get into tech. Always been passionate about tech. I was programming from the age of 11 on an old Sinclair Spectrum. That's how old I am. And then went to a recruitment agency to try and get into tech. They then offered me a job to go and work for them. They said, "Oh, I think you'd be a really good recruitment consultant." I'm like, "Oh, okay." So ended up in an IT recruitment consultancy, did that for 18 months, then ended up, one of my clients at the time, a company called Genesis Enterprise, and a gentleman called Darren Sharp, who you probably all know. He's now head of marketplace at Microsoft.
Oh, that Darren.
He said to me, that Darren Sharp, yeah, he said to me, "Yvonne, I think you'd be great in tech. Why don't you come and work for me?" That was my entry into IT sales. So Darren saw the potential, gave me the opportunity, and the rest, so went from strength to strength.
Yeah, and I think we should turn the tables on you now because and ask the questions that you asked the people in the book. I think it's only fair. So it's reached that time. So yeah, almost kind of quick fire away. So what would you say is the proudest moment of your career so far, and why?
So I think there's two of my career. One is definitely the Cisco practice that I built at Kelway. I think, to take it from basically being an unknown entity or not having a great reputation to winning multiple global awards and becoming the second largest Cisco partner in the UK probably has to be up there as one of my most proudest achievements. And then the channel community. I think what we've created as a collective and being able to provide people the opportunities that not everybody has access to is all about the purpose. It's probably definitely up there with the second.
Yeah, and how would you say coming from a lower socio-economic background impacted your career? Has it impacted it positively or negatively overall?
Overall, I think positively. I think because you do have that work ethic, you have that grit and resilience that you need to keep moving forward. And I think that's something that you don't get if you come from a more privileged upbringing. I mean, I have this constant battle at the moment with my daughter. Clearly, she's not from a working class family. So it's this constant battle of wanting to give her all the experiences and opportunities that I never had, but also make sure that she doesn't turn into some entitled, privileged, spoiled brat. And it is a fine balance because she doesn't have to worry. She won't have to experience some of that stuff. So it's getting that real balance right. In terms of where I think it did impact me, and it slowed me down, I think, is the point. I probably would have achieved a lot more, a lot quicker had I had access to the right support, I suppose, things like knowing how to navigate the corporate corridors, knowing how to behave in certain situations. I remember some embarrassing situations quite early on in my career, even to the point of not knowing that steak comes in rare, medium, or well done. I just thought it was cooked, and not why there was a set of extra knives and forks on the table. And I'm like, why do we have all this? What's all this about? Just silly little things like that people that have come from more privilege just know how to behave and the things that you have to navigate. So, and it's also, I think, impacted me financially massively when I look back. And that was one of the reasons why I got quite keen to explore the social mobility element, was the gender pay gap. When I look at my own career, and I've personally been impacted by quite a significant sum over the course of my career. And I think the early part of that, I mentioned I started on YTS, that was definitely on the company taking advantage. I mean, I was doing a role of somebody getting paid £20,000 a year and I was on 6 because I started on £35 a week. So for me, I was still progressing. To them, they were taking advantage of that situation. Then latter part of my career, that was definitely me just not asking for what I deserved, because I was so grateful for everything that I had. I didn't need anything else. Whereas everybody else was just demanding more and more and more all the time because they had this sense of entitlement, because they've just had this natural gravitas and air of confidence about them that says that they're worth more, even though they clearly weren't. So I think the early part of the career was on the company. The latter part of the career was definitely on me.
Yeah, and what would you say to that younger version of yourself, having achieved what you've achieved?
I'd say be proud of who you are, but be humble, but be confident enough to request what you deserve.
Yeah. What support and help should corporates be doing to help individuals from lower socioeconomic backgrounds to progress?
Provide a safe environment for them to feel like they can be heard or listened to. Buddy them up with somebody. Sort of take them to one side if you feel like that they don't fit in from because of some of their behaviours, their accent or the way they show up or how they write. That was one for me. Grammar, I was terrible at it. Thankfully, Grammarly saved my life. So provide them with that's a great example. Provide them with the tools and the knowledge that they need to help support them. I mean, now with AI, to be fair, I think it's a massive opportunity to level that playing field even further. So give them access to the right tools and the support that they need to be able to progress and flourish.
Yeah, great. And equally, what advice would you give to someone from a lower socio-economic background that's maybe looking to get into the channel or navigate their way through the industry?
Network. I think if I think about how I've managed to build the career that I have, it's definitely down to my network. I had to build it myself, but it's definitely, I don't think I've applied for a role or got a client through having to cold calls for the last 30 years. So your network is so important. If you can create and develop an amazing network, you will come across relentless opportunities.
Definitely. Well, I mean, that concludes the quick fire questions section. But I was also interested in the process of writing a book. I've never written a book. I don't think I ever would. I've not got any ideas. I wouldn't know where to start. It would just be horrendous. But there will be people listening that will want to write books. And how do you go about it? How do you go about getting a book published? What's the process like? So tell me, what did you learn from that process of writing a book? What would you do differently again if you were doing it? I know you've done it multiple times, but what would you do differently if you were doing it another time?
Well, they were both quite different. One, I think the first time I wrote The Conditioning Kills Confidence was based on trying to answer some questions that I had and do it as like a problem solving exercise. People ask me about this all the time. I never set out to be an author. It wasn't one on my, which I know sounds awful because I know some people would love to write a book, but it was literally written to solve a problem that I felt other people had that I didn't, and trying to unravel the differences between me and the people that did lack confidence. So I approached it, actually I wrote a course first, and then I took the course content and then articulated it into a book. And then with the help of Olivia Jakolska, who's part of the channel community, who's my amazing friend who edited it for me, we were talking about publishing, and there are organisations out there that will publish for you, and that you can pay them a fee and they'll help you publish it. But she sort of inspired me to say, look, the book's about confidence, you've got to publish it yourself. So I taught myself how to publish it via looking at YouTube. There's some really great tutorials on Amazon. So there's two ways that you can do it. You can either buy your own ISBN numbers, which I did the first time. So Co-Cheer is also a publishing company. So I created my own publishing company as part of that experience. So you buy ISBN numbers and then you publish under that. But this time I just did it through Amazon because it was a lot simpler. So Amazon, you can literally, they give you all the templates of how to upload it, make sure that it's right in the right format. They even have one for the Kindle version of it as well. And then if you want to record it like I did on the first book, I mean, we didn't have to do that for the Smashing the Glass Ceiling because we'd already done the podcast. So we've already got an audio book. People can just go and listen to the stories on there. But if you want to convert it to an audio, get yourself a good environment to record it in. And then there's some software you can use called Audacity that will help you get it to the right tone that you need to be able to upload it. So it's really not that difficult. I think it's just getting, the first thing is getting what's in here on here. Start there, one page at a time. And off you go. So
there weren't any horrendous moments when it comes back and it's all printed the wrong way around, or bits.
Oh, that. Okay. So the biggest lesson I learned with the second book is when you when someone offers to do it for you, make sure that they're the one that does it, or they're very clear on the expectations. I think that was probably my biggest lesson. No one is going to care about it as much as you are. And certainly when you're going to delegate it, make sure that you delegate it to the right person. And by that, I mean, make sure that they've got the capacity to do it within the timescales, and they're very clear on the outcome that you're expecting. Because one person's version of good is not quite the same as yours. But again, massive lesson, but we're here now, so we've got the final version ready to go. As you can see here,
there it is.
Is that how?
There
it is already. Yes. Nice shiny, yeah. So so that was a big lesson. One I won't be repeating.
No, that's good to know. And I mean, just going back to one final time to the theme of the book. Some people will go, well, that's interesting what you're saying about the stats and the stories, but why does it actually matter? If one group, whether it's women or a race element or socially, why does it matter that they're underrepresented in the channel or the tech industry? Why should we care?
Because these people will probably outperform most of the people that you have in your existing organisation that come from more privileged. You're probably wasting a huge amount of money on paying for people with less talent, with less work ethic, with less grit, with less resilience. And also it's a different dynamic, a different set of opinions. You need that view from a whole multiple of facets. It's not just one size fits all. If you keep doing the same things, you're going to keep getting the same results. And diversity isn't just about gender. It's not just about race. It's all of the different elements and components that make up a human. If you don't care about it, then you end up with organisations that, are struggling right now. If you do care about it, you're probably thriving.
Definitely, and I mean, it'd be good to get your advice on this. But I was just thinking of a scenario where, obviously, I won't name the company, but there was a company in our sector that was hiring for graduates, I think, and they made it very clear in the advert that they or there was maybe not in the advert, but maybe from the hiring manager, that they only wanted people from, it might have been Russell Group rather than Oxbridge, but the top universities,
Yeah.
which is fine, but there's also a problem with underrepresentation in the top universities. So you'd be filtering out a lot of people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds by doing that. So with that in mind, with that kind of thing still happening, what would be your kind of parting advice to companies in the channel that want to maybe change things up and make sure they're hiring more people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds?
Well, a lot of people from those socioeconomic backgrounds won't have access to those types of universities, but I want to share. So I'm very good friends with former CEO of blue chip FTSE 250 organisation. He's Australian, and we were sat over dinner talking about this exact topic because a lot of people that they were hiring came from that Russell Group, and they were the similar demographic within the finance sector. He's Australian. He became the CEO, and we were talking about how did he become the CEO then, because he didn't go to Russell Group University, and he was saying that the only reason he became the CEO, and by the way, he was the youngest CEO in the FTSE 250 at the time, was because he was Australian, and because he come from a very working sort of middle class. His parents were teachers. He went to a normal state university in Australia because the company that he worked for got acquired by an Australian by a big global organisation, finance house. Then he got into that function. So he was really keen about exploring doing something different. So they did a load of research, and they researched and they interviewed the most successful people across their organisation. And education was not the marker of success. What university they came from was not an indicator of how successful they would be. What it came down to were three things. One, work ethic. They had a desire to work. They were ready to get up in the morning, do whatever it took to get stuff done. They played team sport, so they were a team player. They weren't just about themselves. It wasn't just about them. They were used to working competitive level. So these people were playing team sports, and they had some form of trauma in their former life. So they may have been had an abuse situation. They might have had parents broken up. They might have lost a sibling or a parent. Something that quite traumatic would have happened to them earlier on in their life to give them resilience and grit. So those were the three consistent traits that came across the most successful people in that finance organisation.
How good they were at their job.
Not education.
How well they were performing in their roles. Yeah.
Oh, they were outperforming everyone else in the company.
Yeah.
And if you think back, I mean, I would not have got a job at CDW based on their hiring methodology had I not worked at Kelway. Because again, and you see this in a lot of American organisations specifically, they have to have a degree. Yet most people that are successful don't need a degree for that role. I mean, a lot of the time, the degree is not even relevant to the job that they're doing. So why is that so important? And Angela Duckworth writes about it in her book Grit as well. Right. What you want to hire for is grittiness, resilience, work ethic. Those are the things that are going to make someone successful, not the university that they were very privileged to go to.
Got it. So that would be your advice, really, to anyone that's running a reseller or an MSP or even a vendor or distributor, is to hire on those factors.
Hire on ability, to hire on attitude, on grit, resilience, work ethic. Everything else is teachable. Every single skill.
I mean, is it harder to do because it's harder to see that on a CV or whatever? How do you show you've got grit on a CV? Or obviously you can show you got a 2-1 from Cambridge, but how do you actually hire for that?
It's a really good question. I think you have to look at what they've achieved outside of the education. So somebody that might have had multiple jobs, as they might have started working when they were really young, that's going to show they've got a work ethic. They might have done, I did weed picking, paper rounds, every single role that I've done, it's taught me something, right? So maybe that they're part of a community, or they're giving back because they care about something else.
Yep.
So they might have done, they might volunteer for an organisation. So there are ways and things that you could show up that you might want to look out for. And there'll be certain signs, but also don't just hire off a piece of paper. Go out and do some outreach. Go look to your local areas. Look at the schools that are in your area. Like something that Natilic did quite recently that I supported them on. They went to a school in a more underprivileged area and got those kids to do work experience, because this is the other thing you find. People offer work experience, and who gets the work experience?
Yeah, no.
The family members of the people that work there already. Well, that's not helpful, is it? So it's initiatives like that. And I know Titan are another great organisation that do a lot of work within their local area around Tower Hamlets, for example. Go and speak to the CEOs of these organisations and go and ask them what are they doing to try and help to do this, because the people that make an effort and do challenge the status quo are reaping the rewards.
Great. And there's some really actually well-known people that you've interviewed in this book. I guarantee you will know at least several of the people that you've interviewed, some of which you have no idea what their backgrounds were before you read it. So well done for getting all those people's stories together in a book. And I believe the book is set for launch on, is it the 11th of June? Is that correct?
It is, yes. So if you can get a copy by going on Kindle. So if you want the Kindle version, it's on Amazon, or the paperback copy will also be on Amazon, so you can purchase a copy that way. If you want an author copy, you can get in touch with myself. So if you're a company that might want to buy multiple copies because you might want to gift them to people within your organisation and you want to bulk purchase them, then you can reach out to me directly and I can arrange that for you, because we can give more money to the charity through author copies than we can if you go direct on Amazon, because obviously we have all the costs associated with the fees, etc., that come by them.
Oh, brilliant. Well, thanks, Yvonne, for running me through that. Really, really good to talk to you in some depth about that, and really learnt a lot. And it's fascinating to chat to you about some of the themes in the book.
Thanks, and really, really appreciate you taking the time, Doug.
Yeah. All right. Thanks a lot, Yvonne. Speak to you soon.
Thank you.